Hey everyone, I'm Bruce, and today I'm going to show you 3 reading comp strategies that will first of all let you read any GMAT reading comp passage in about a minute, while increasing your comprehension, I know, and most importantly, set you up to get all of the questions right. Also, just because you're here today, I have a free gift for you. 3 simple strategies to raise your GMAT score 30 points today. These are the exact same strategies I teach all of my private students. I know they're super effective. They're really going to help you out. And most importantly, it's free. You can get your copy right in the description. Okay, let's dive into the reading comp. I'm going to show you the 3 essential strategies for scoring 700 plus on the reading comp portion of the GMAT. People who score over 700 on the reading comp passages read very fast, they read for very specific information, and crucially, they read not very much at all. The other thing they do, they get all the questions right, and I'm going to show you how to do that too. At the end of this training, you're going to be able to read any passage in about 60 to 90 seconds with better comprehension, and most importantly, you're going to be able to get all the questions right. As you read the passage, you have 2 goals. You want to exit the passage with a very good understanding of the main points and a much less good understanding of the details. The reason is we're going to see understanding the main points leads to clarity and to getting right answers quickly. Trying to read and understand everything in the passage is going to get you bogged down in the details and only leads to confusion and hesitancy, and it's going to make you slower and less accurate when it comes time to answering the questions. So, how can you make sure that you're picking out all the important stuff you need to understand the passage and leaving the junk behind? I'm going to show you. At the beginning and the end of the passage, I want you to read more slowly, and I want you to read for very specific information. I want you to write down in just a few words the answers to these 4 questions. What is the passage about? What is the author's point of view, or what does the author think about the subject? Are there other points of view? Now, there aren't always, but it's important to catch this because you know for sure the test will try and get you to confuse the author's point of view with any other points of view. And finally, what is the tone? How argumentative is the passage? Or is it just neutrally explaining stuff? For example, if the passage is about huge amounts of plastic garbage in the Pacific, is the author saying that that's a terrible thing? Or is the author simply explaining how the garbage ended up in the ocean? So that's what you do with the beginning and the end. Read more slowly and jot down your answers to the 4 questions. In the middle of the passage, we want you to read very, very quickly, just skim actually, and employ the fine art of blah, blah, blahing around stuff. Which stuff? Well, you want to quickly skim or blah, blah, blah over examples, because examples, they don't give us any information about the main point of the passage. All that examples ever do is support whatever the main point of the paragraph is. Also, quickly move through or blah, blah, blah your way past description and jargon. Again, that stuff's not providing any insight into the main points of the paragraph. What you want to pay attention to are single declarative sentences, especially ones that seem like conclusions. We're looking for words like finally, or thus, or therefore, or so now we know. We're looking for any sentence that gives us some understanding of what the author thinks. And frankly, lots of times, especially in science passages, they tend to be about the only sentences you can actually understand. Now, all this stuff is frankly harder to talk about and describe than it is to actually do. So let's just jump in with an example. Okay, so let's try this one, and you're going to do the same thing. You're going to stop the video and you're going to take a minute to read the passage, and then what I want you to do is try your hand at writing down the answers to the 4 questions and then pick out the main points of the middle paragraphs. Now, if the middle paragraphs get super technical and you're not really sure what the main point is, don't worry about it. Just jot down what type of information we'd find in the paragraph. Oftentimes, I just read the first sentence or 2. The idea is that you want to know where to find information if you're asked about it. Now, you don't need to try and wade through those middle paragraphs and try to understand everything. In fact, trying to understand an entire passage is a slow, sure, standardized death. Okay, so stop the video, do your best, and when you come back, I'll show you how I read it. I know, right? I didn't understand any of that passage either, but remember, not understanding the passage is no excuse for not getting all the questions right, and I'll show you how that works. Okay, so this is how I read it. And what you're going to see is mostly I just stuck to the stuff that I could actually understand, which as it turns out isn't very much, but it's more than enough to understand what the main points of the passage are, and importantly, to get all of the questions right. All right, so the Big Bang model postulates the universe was created in a fireball between 10 and 20 billion years ago. Okay, I actually understand that sentence. The model attempts to reconstruct the behavior earlier to use general relativity elements, but okay, I don't understand any of that. And then we get matching these claims with observations of the universe today shows its validity. Okay, I understand that. Next paragraph. The Big Bang produced a universe made almost entirely of hydrogen and helium. Wow, surprisingly, I understood that full sentence. For the first few seconds of the universe's existence, its temperature was so high, well, 10 billion degrees, of energetic electron, neutrinos and positrons. I don't understand any of that. So they lost me after 10 billion degrees, and that's okay. I am not reading the rest of that paragraph. I'm just going to skim over it, blah, blah, blah over it. All right, next paragraph. After a few minutes, the temperature of the universe fell. I understand that, to about 1 billion degrees. Cool enough, okay, for these protons and neutrons to bond and form nuclei. Deuterons were formed. Okay, I'm not understanding any of that. I understand most of the first half of the first sentence. Okay, got it. This universe starts to cool down. All right, what about the fourth paragraph? Because only one neutron was formed, so 7 protons, 7/6 of all protons remain. Oh my gosh. So remaining protons, hydrogen nuclei, 1 proton each. Nope, 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 nope. This simple prediction matches observations very well. That sentence I understand. And I also see that that's very, very similar to the sentence in the first paragraph where matching these claims with observations of the universe today shows its validity. So I'm guessing that's a pretty important point. All right. Okay, so the stuff in yellow is the stuff we actually read, and it's not very much. We may have read maybe 20% of this thing, but as you're going to find, it is more than enough to answer the 4 questions and get all of the questions right that they ask you. All right, well, what is this about? What's about the Big Bang model? What's the author's point of view? What does the author think about the Big Bang model? Well, the Big Bang model he thinks is true because observations match claims. Are there other points of view? Are there people out there who don't think the Big Bang model is true? No, there's not. And what is the tone? Well, I call the tone like persuasive. It's not nearly as argumentative as the last passage, but I think the author would like to persuade you that the Big Bang model is true. All right, well, what about those middle paragraphs? Well, paragraph 2 we know is about the first few seconds of the universe, something about hydrogen and helium, and we know it's really hot. What about paragraph 3? Paragraph 3 is about the first few minutes of the universe, and we know that things get cooler. And what about paragraph 4? Paragraph 4 again reiterates this idea that predictions match observations. And with this outline of the passage, we can get all the questions right. Okay, let's try this question. The author is primarily concerned with. Anytime you get a question like the author is primarily concerned with, or what is the main point of the entire passage, the correct answer will be the answer choice that most closely matches what you wrote down in your answers to the first 4 questions. So we're looking for something about a Big Bang model and something about observations matching claims. All right, well, let's go through each one. A, explaining how the evolution of the universe is incompatible with the Big Bang model. No, we know that's not true. The author actually believes in the Big Bang model. B, chronicling the events that followed the creation of matter by the Big Bang. B is a classic distractor. It's wrong. Yes, the passage does talk some about what happened in the first few seconds and few minutes of the Big Bang, but did we write any of that down when we answered our first 4 questions? No, the main point that we wrote down was is that the author believes that the Big Bang is correct because predictions match observations. Stick to that. Do not let the test answers push you around or make you change your mind. You've already done the analysis. You've already figured out what the main point is, and you have written it down. You know the author's main point of view is about observations matching predictions. The test needs to adhere to your analysis, not the other way around. So B is wrong. C, explaining how helium was formed in the, no, we never wrote down anything about helium. D, illustrating propositions of a model and showing how they have been supported by observation. Oh, that's interesting. Are we talking about a model? Yeah, we wrote down Big Bang model. And are we talking about things supported by observations? Yeah, observations match claims. D is pretty close to what we wrote down. That's a maybe. What about E? Showing how the ratios of protons and neutrons, no. We never wrote down protons and neutrons. The one that is closest to what we wrote down is answer choice D. Good job. Let's try another question. In the fourth paragraph, the author introduces information about the Big Bang model's prediction for the molecular composition of the universe in order to. Okay, so we know for sure that evidence and data always supports the main point of the paragraph. So what the question is really asking you is, what is the main point of that fourth paragraph? What is this data supporting? What main point is the author supporting with this data? Okay, well, what we're going to do is we're going to pick out what the main point of the fourth paragraph is, and we actually already wrote it down, and it's highlighted in yellow here. We have the simple prediction matches observations very well. And what does it mean when the predictions match observations? Well, it means that the Big Bang is valid. All right, so we need something about predictions matching observations and the Big Bang being a valid theory. Let's see if we get it. A, obviate, which means I think of it as to obliviate, the claim that 6/7 of all protons remain at, no, it's just not about that. It's something about predictions matching observations and the Big Bang's correct. Showing that the remaining 1/4 of the total mass, no. Provide evidence for the validity of the Big Bang model. It's pretty much right on top of what we said paragraph 4 is about. Describe the means by which remaining protons form hydronuclide. No. Predict the results of the Big Bang. Tempting, but no. The whole idea of the predictions matching observations is that shows that the Big Bang is valid. It's not trying to predict the results of the Big Bang. So our answer choice is C. Good job. Let's try another one. According to the passage, which of the following was true during the first few seconds of the universe's existence? We actually like this question quite a bit because it points us to a very specific spot in the reading. We know for sure it's paragraph 2 because it says that in paragraph 2, but even more importantly, we wrote down that the second paragraph was about the first few seconds, so we know for sure the answer is going to be in that second paragraph. Okay, we have that second paragraph kind of blown up there over to the right, and I'm noticing that this is a Roman numeral type question, and we love Roman numeral type questions because it gives us a shortcut. What I want you to do is take a look at the answer choices and then ask yourself which Roman numeral appears most often in the answer choices, and the answer is Roman numeral number 3. Roman numeral number 3 is an answer choice C, D, and E. So that's the one we're going to go after first, and we're going to hope that it's wrong, because if it is, then we get to cross out C, D, and E. Okay, so Roman numeral number 3 says vast numbers of subatomic particles rapidly transmuted into other types of particles. Okay, what does that mean in our own words? It means particles are changing into other particles. Okay, let's see if we get anything like that in the paragraph, and I'm reading. Oh, shoot. Subatomic particles constantly transformed into one another. Okay, yep. So that means that answer choice 3 is in fact correct. But we do get to cross off answer choice A and answer choice B. Okay, so now we look at C, D, and E and we ask ourselves which Roman numeral appears most often, and it's Roman numeral number 2, so we'll go after that one next. The temperature was not high enough to allow for the formation of deuterons. Okay. You know what? I don't think that's correct for two reasons. First of all, it says that it was really, really hot. And the second thing is, I don't see the word deuterons anywhere in this passage at all. And we know for sure that the answer to the question must be in paragraph 2, because we know for sure we're talking about the first few seconds. That's what they said, the first few seconds. So it must be in paragraph 2. Deuterons aren't even mentioned in paragraph 2. That means Roman numeral number 2 cannot be right. So that knocks out D and E. That means our answer is C. Okay, very nicely done. Okay, so the key takeaways. Your goal after you're done reading a reading comp passage is to have a very good understanding of the main points and a much less good understanding of the details. Okay, and how do we do that? We read a little bit more slowly at the beginning and the end, and we jot down our answer to the 4 questions. What is it about? What's the author's point of view? Are there other points of view? And what's the tone? And remember, you want to capture that information really succinctly in about a maximum of about 5 words. The more succinctly you capture it, the more clearly you'll understand what the passage is about. And in the middle parts of the passage, you want to read fast and employ the fine art of blah, blah, blahing around all the stuff we don't care about. Ignore examples, ignore description and jargon. What you're trying to hone in and focus in on are declarative sentences or conclusion-y kind of sentences. That's it. Great job. Now, the key to learning any new skill is practice. And remember, the GMAT works just like anything else in life. The more you practice it, the better you get, guaranteed. Okay, great job, guys.